Lesson 16, first draft, and more particularly, the beginning of your first draft. I'm going to go ahead and start off by reading the instructions and then I'll delve into the details. Now that you've spent time considering the ideal personal narrative topic and have planned out the details from your lesson learning experience, it's time to put it all together and write your first draft. Your first draft is a rough draft, so there is no pressure to produce the perfect piece of writing. Instead, use your pre-writing plans and ideas to turn your thoughts and ideas into sentences and paragraphs. So, the goal of this lesson is to begin the beginning of your narrative essay. We kind of break the boundaries here with narrative writing. With formulaic writing, such as compare, contrast, explanatory, argumentative, we have very specific paragraphs that we're supposed to write. You typically an introduction, body paragraphs, typically 3, and a conclusion. If I am writing an argumentative essay, there's a counterclaim right before the conclusion, right? So the difference here is that in a narrative essay, we kind of use what we call chunks. So the chunking of the beginning, the middle, and the end. So think of the beginning as the introduction, the middle as the body paragraphs, the ending as the conclusion. That's why I have the 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. That's what you kind of want to think of when chunking. But narrative writing kind of elaborates or elongates those ideas into more paragraphs. So for the beginning, we might be writing 1 to 3 paragraphs. For the middle, which is typically only 3 paragraphs long in a formulaic writing or essay, in narrative writing, it's typically now like 3 to, oh boy, could be 10, right, paragraphs. And then ending, which is typically, or a conclusion, which is typically 1 paragraph, it could be now 1 to 3 paragraphs, okay? So these chunks are guidelines. And think of these chunks as sections of a plot chart. All right, so the beginning is typically the exposition and maybe the first part of your rising action. The middle is the later part of your rising action, the climax, and the first part of your falling action. And then the ending is the later part of the falling action and the resolution. Okay? So therefore, there's a lot of information to go in these 3 chunks. And that's why you typically use more than the typical 5-paragraph essay to write a narrative essay. I typically see 20-paragraph essays here. And that doesn't mean it's more difficult, right? It actually sometimes flows a little more easily for writers. It's very personalized, okay? And that, again, is very different than formulaic writing, okay? So, the beginning, that is the focus of this lesson. So you are wanting to write the beginning of your narrative. Typically, you want to engage the reader. We don't want to be bored when starting to read your essay. So you engage the reader through a couple ways. Think of this, right, as the hook. You could ask us questions. You could what we call foreshadow, or it's basically to start to tell something that happens later in the story. And typically when you foreshadow something, it really grabs that reader's attention because they want to know how that came about. So you could foreshadow the climax. You could do a flashback, meaning maybe you can reflect back to a situation that happened before all of this that then put you in this situation, right? Or you could do a fun fact or carefully use humor or sarcasm. If you do humor or sarcasm, please be tactful with it, meaning don't be disrespectful with your sarcasm or humor, all right? Those are things that could be very tricky to use sometimes. So the beginning not only grabs the reader's attention, but it also starts to set the scene, to weave your narrative. Meaning, what's the setting? Who are some of the characters? What is starting to happen in the story? I want to know. Okay? So scrolling down here, the first draft for the beginning grabs the reader's attention. You could use dialogue, foreshadow, or a moment of excitement. You do want to make sure that you follow standard convention expectations, meaning that you indent every new paragraph, you capitalize, and then you use proper punctuation. So, indent, what is that? Anytime you do a new paragraph or when you have a new idea or topic, you hit Enter, Tab. That's an indentation. So to show you, here we go. This is where I want to type. All right, I start with hello. That's not indented. So I hit the Tab button. Boom. That indents it a 1/2 inch. Okay? So I'm going to show you where the indent button is. Here we go. All right. So the indent button is that word or that button or key that says tab right next to Q. What that button does is it indents your new paragraph, the first word of the new paragraph, in 1/2 inch. So instead of hitting enter and doing space, right? You just hit tab. And as you saw there, when I hit enter there, it did it for me automatically because the program's sensing that I'm starting a new paragraph. If it doesn't, and you hit enter and it does that, hit tab, and now you are aligned again. So if you hit enter and it's tabbed in already, and then you don't realize that, and you hit tab again, and now your new paragraph looks like this, make sure they are all aligned because they need to be aligned appropriately, 1/2 inch in. Okay? So that's what indent means. Make sure that all your paragraphs are indented, and then make sure that all proper words or proper nouns and any names, which are proper nouns, are capitalized. The beginning of sentences are capitalized. All right, and then that you're also using proper punctuation, question marks, commas, periods, exclamation marks, quotation marks. Okay? There is an editing piece once you write your rough draft where we go in and we focus on punctuation, but the more accurate you are now, the easier it's going to be later. Okay? So, kind of guiding you a little bit on the beginning, it's typically 1 to 2 paragraphs. I'd even say 3 paragraphs is fine for the beginning. And the goal, again, is to grab the reader's attention and start to set the setting and the characters and start to weave the tale of your narrative. So an example here is paragraph 1 could be about foreshadowing the climax. That's your hook. That's grabbing the reader's attention. Then my paragraph 2 is starting to explain the setting of the narrative. I could dive into the weather, the time, the season, the location, right? And then I start to begin to tell my story. So back on lesson 12, you guys put a lot of your events in chronological order. So this is a great lesson to help guide you on when to start to write a new paragraph. As you see, there are 3 items here in the beginning. So these 3 items could be topics for each paragraph that you write in your beginning. So if you're talking about the hook here, right, when you're grabbing the reader's attention, and the minute that you start to talk about Bob, which is number 2 here, right, and then this is hook, okay? So if you're hooking the reader's attention, the minute you transition into Bob, the topic of Bob, that could tell you that's the moment that you start a new paragraph. And then the minute that you start talking about Florence, right, then that's a new paragraph, okay? So this chronological order lesson, lesson 12, can help you in transitioning to new paragraphs, okay? So use this. This could very easily help you. For every number, that could be a new paragraph. So the beginning, again, is diving into your hook and starting to set the setting and starting to tell your story a little bit while introducing some characters. If you're really struggling on beginning your story, use reference texts. Use model texts. And that could be like the book Wonder that we're reading right now. Look at how Augie starts his tale. Or a reference to other books that you've read. How do those books start their narrative? Okay? Use those model texts to help guide you. And then once we're done here, your next lesson will be the middle of your essay, and then the following lesson will be the end. So take your time on this, don't rush it, and start weaving that narrative. And I'm very interested to learn and read about it. Okay? Give this video a watch a couple times if you don't understand this lesson fully. And then if you still don't fully understand it after a couple watches, then feel free to email me. All right, I'll talk to you guys later, and good luck.